Hi there, and welcome to the channel of A Disappointed Man with me, Jason Kennedy, The Disappointed Man. Now, this video is my response to a kind of meme that is circulating on BookTube, which was 5 great English novels. However, there is a slight twist. I haven't selected strictly novels, but I've chosen 5 great books about England that you may not be aware of and you might wish to check out because they are indeed great. So let's start with the first one. Kipling's Pook of Pook's Hill. It's supposedly a set of children's stories. However, there is much more here than would simply satisfy the imagination of a child. It really demonstrates Kipling's extraordinary abilities as a storyteller and his kind of archaeological, historical imagination. He draws such a deep picture of English history in this collection, and the basic idea, the premise, is magical, which is a boy and a girl in contemporary England make contact with Puck, a fairy who is able to draw them into contact with living figures from English history who then tell their stories, and these stories become linked in a kind of cycle that culminates in the signing of Magna Carta and includes all kinds of interesting adventures and magical encounters. So that would be one here. Pook of Pook's Hill. You will thank me afterwards after you read that. It's amazing. The second one, coincidentally, by someone who arrives in England from the periphery, the colonial periphery, and that is V.S. Naipaul. It often seems to be overlooked these days in terms of the quality of his novels. This one is The Enigma of Arrival. It's got the painting with the same name, I believe, on the front. And this is about Naipaul coming and spending a season in rural England, and he comes up with the most incredibly sensitive account of his time in this place. And like Kipling, his understanding reaches backwards in a deep way, and he also attends so carefully to the rhythms of rural life and the people that sustain these rhythms. And he alights upon a person called Jack Pitton, and he's a kind of gardener, and he follows him about his work, and he is a kind of key to the English rural landscape, and a lot becomes invested in this very taciturn individual. It's a little like the taciturn gardener on the country estate in the Fast Show, you know, the one with the the homoerotic relationship with his master, but none of that kind of thing. But if you read this book, or you've read it, you will understand the loving nature of Naipaul's documentation of this man and his work, and when it reaches a climax, it's quite a heartbreaking book in many ways, but it just looks at England through completely fresh eyes and just shows you, even though I grew up in the English countryside, I just hadn't got this kind of depth of engagement that Naipaul brings to it. It's an amazing book. The next one, also by someone not from England, and that is Paul Theroux, The Kingdom by the Sea, and he endeavours to travel by train all around the coast of England and maybe more controversially parts of Ireland or Northern Ireland, and he also walks when he can't take a train, and it's set at the time. His walk takes place when it's the Falklands conflict is happening, so it's 1982. And the reactions to this as he walks around Britain form a kind of backdrop, but it's just full of chance occurrences, sage kind of observations on England. It picks up on literary references that may be attached to a place or historical references. So again, like Naipaul, like Kipling, it's going backwards in time as well as presenting the present day. That's a wonderful book. The next one, also by someone not born in England, it's Denton Welch, born in Shanghai. And this I talked about in the writings of Denton Welch, but this is the English holiday, you know, the rural English holiday of muddy boots and grazed knees and bicycle rides and picnics. There are some like aspects of it that you might not find on the average holiday. I don't know. There's some kind of sexual awakening going on in here as well. But yeah, that can happen. A holiday romance, that's a thing, isn't it? But this is also a wonderful evocation of England. When I read this, I've been living outside of England now for almost 20 years, and I'm just drawn right back into the forests and the hills and the summer days that never seem to end of England. That is wonderful. That is Denton Welch in Youth is Pleasure. My last one, finally, an Englishman, and that is a novel as well. So it's Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. Now it's the kind of novel where you always see it mentioned in histories of the English novel. You know, there's these two strands, and one of them is Samuel Richardson there with Clarissa, and the other one is Henry Fielding with his Tom Jones. And you read about it, but you don't necessarily want to sit down and read 800 and something pages. However, in the down moments while writing my thesis, of which there were more than there were up moments, one week I just quickly read it. I thought I would just read the opening pages. I thought it was so big that when I started to read it, I would, you know, of course think, Jason, you have to stop reading. You know, it was so big that I thought it would push me away from reading it and back towards my thesis. But I hadn't reckoned on how good it is, and instead the thesis got hung out to dry, and Tom Jones by Henry Fielding had the chance to unfurl its glory. And it's hard to, oh dear, it's hard. It's like you've already read it, because almost every novel that you've read has got some kind of, can be traced back to it in some way. So it has got this kind of recognition as you're reading it that you've already drunk it in somehow from 100 other sources. However, nothing replaces the pleasure of this incredibly amusing and extremely well crafted, amazingly plotted masterpiece. It was so good, and you're waiting for 800 pages for Blifil, the one of the villains of the piece, to get his comeuppance. You've waited so long that when it finally arrives, it's a moment of the purest satisfaction. It's a masterpiece. I bought his other books afterwards to read. It was just incredible. So there are 5 great books about England, presented very briefly. I hope you get something out of that. Please comment. Please tell everyone you know, if you have to accost them in the street, even people you don't know, to subscribe to my channel and help it grow. I'm rather stuck on 54 subscribers. It's not a good place to be, ladies and gentlemen. So do what you can to help me with that. And until the next time, be safe, be strong, and nanu nanu.